Premier Wab Kinew says his government is responding by sticking up for Manitobans. The province is offering tax relief for businesses and taking American products off some shelves.
This was not supposed to matter this much. Not Manitoba. Not liquor shelves. Not one interview about tariffs. But sometimes the smallest pressure point reveals the biggest weakness. And that is exactly what happened when Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew was asked a simple question about American alcohol. Canadian tariffs, and whether the province would consider letting US booze back onto Manitoba shelves. It should have been routine, careful, and diplomatic answer. A sentence full of conditions, consultations, and political fog. But Kinew did not do that. He made it simple. If Donald Trump removes the tariffs on Canadian goods, then Manitoba can look at bringing American alcohol back. No tariffs, no threats. Then maybe the booze comes back. And that one answer changed the energy of the conversation, because Washington is used to Canada responding with statements. Canada is concerned and disappointed. Canada values the relationship and remains committed to dialogue. But Manitoba gave Washington something different, a condition. If you remove the pressure, we remove the counter-pressure. And that is where the story stopped being about alcohol and started becoming about leverage. Because Trump's tariff strategy depends on one basic assumption, that the United States is bigger, so it can create pain faster than Canada can respond. Washington threatens steel, threatens aluminum, threatens lumber, and autos. Washington shakes the market, unsettles industries, and waits for Canada to come back to the table looking for relief. That is the old script. America pushes, Canada reacts. It threatens, Canada explains, it escalates, Canada asks for fairness. But Manitoba interrupted that script. It did not try to overpower the United States. It did not pretend Winnipeg could outmuscle Washington. It simply found a pressure point Washington could understand, which is American alcohol. And that is why this move worked. Alcohol is not the biggest industry in the trade war. It is not steel. Neither is it autos nor energy. But it is visible, emotional, and simple. One day the bottles are there. The next day they are gone. You do not need a trade lawyer to understand what happened. Trump hit Canada with tariffs. Manitoba hit back by removing American booze. And when Washington wanted access restored, Kinew made the price clear. Drop the tariffs. That shocked everyone, because the answer was too clean for normal politics. A reporter asked, "Are you really saying that if the US removes tariffs on steel, aluminum, lumber, and autos, Manitoba would consider lifting the alcohol ban?" And Kinew did not retreat. He did not soften it. He did not hide behind technical language. He confirmed it. No tariffs. No threat of tariffs. Then you can have the booze back. That kind of clarity is rare. Most politicians would leave themselves an escape route. They would say the matter is complex, all options remain open. They would say discussions are ongoing, and they will continue working with partners. Kinew did not do that. He gave people a sentence they could understand, which reversed the emotional balance. Instead of Canada asking Washington for relief, Manitoba made Washington ask for access. Instead of Canada only explaining why tariffs are unfair, Manitoba showed that unfairness has consequences. Instead of treating the United States as the only side with leverage, Manitoba showed that smaller players can still find pressure points. That is what Washington may not have expected. It expected Canada to complain and to negotiate. It expected premiers to posture for a while and eventually soften. But Manitoba turned a liquor shelf into a trade weapon. And that is more powerful than it sounds. Because a tariff makes a product more expensive. But a shelf ban makes a product disappear, which means you cannot sell what people cannot buy. You cannot pretend everything is normal when your bottles are no longer in the market. You cannot tell American producers they are being protected when their own government's tariff strategy is helping push them off Canadian shelves. That is the contradiction Manitoba exposed. Trump says he is defending American workers. But if his tariffs cause Canadian provinces to remove American products, then American producers pay a price too. The pain does not stop at the border, it travels back. It reaches distillers, wineries, breweries, and distributors. It also reaches workers who probably never asked to become collateral damage in a political trade war. That is why targeted retaliation matters. It does not have to equal the size of the American economy. It only has to be painful enough to be noticed. And Manitoba made itself noticed. Now, if this breakdown is helping you see what is really happening behind the headline, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel does not just follow political statements. We follow leverage. We follow pressure. We follow who is pretending not to feel the heat, and who is quietly changing the rules of the game. Subscribe now, because this Canada-US trade fight is moving into a much bigger stage. And what Manitoba just revealed may only be the beginning. Because just when the interview seemed to be about tariffs and alcohol, Kinew pushed the conversation into a completely different zone. He mentioned the Epstein-files. And that is when the atmosphere changed. Because tariffs are normal political territory. Steel is normal. Lumber is normal. Autos are normal. Even alcohol, as sharp as it was, still belonged inside the trade argument. But Epstein is different. Epstein is not a trade file. It is not a customs dispute, but a political nerve. It is one of those issues that makes powerful people suddenly become careful with their words. And Kinew knew exactly what he was touching. The point was not to turn a tariff interview into a courtroom. The point was to show that Washington also has uncomfortable pressure points. If American officials want to talk tough about Canada, if they want to joke about Canada as a 51st state, if they want to perform outrage in hearings and treat Canada like a subordinate, then Canada does not have to pretend Washington is untouchable. Canada can ask uncomfortable questions too. Now, to be clear, being referenced in Epstein-related records is not the same as being charged, convicted, or proven guilty of wrongdoing. That distinction matters. But politically, the issue remains explosive because it represents secrecy, elite protection, and public distrust. And Kinew understood the discomfort. He did not need to prove a legal case in that moment. He only needed to show that pressure can travel both ways. And the laughter in the room mattered. Because everyone understood what had happened. A Canadian premier had taken a tariff conversation and turned it into a mirror. If Washington wants to make Canada uncomfortable, then Canada can make Washington uncomfortable. If Washington wants access, then Washington can remove the threat. That was the real message. And this is why this move left Washington stunned, because it expected the fight to happen on its terms. Tariffs, threats, market access, and American leverage. But Manitoba changed the arena. It fought with visibility, with consumer pressure and political embarrassment. And most importantly, it fought with a line ordinary people could repeat. No tariffs. No threats. No booze. That is stronger than it looks. Because the best political messages do not need translation. They move fast because people understand them instantly. But the story does not stop at the liquor shelf. It also points to something bigger. Churchill. The Port of Churchill, northern Manitoba, trade corridors, energy, critical minerals, and new routes. At first, that sounds like a different topic. But it is actually the same story on a larger map. The alcohol ban is immediate leverage. Churchill is long-term strategy. One says no today. The other asks how Canada builds options for tomorrow. Because this is the deeper problem Canada faces. For decades, Canada's economy has been pulled south toward the United States. That relationship created wealth. But it also created vulnerability. When one market dominates your economy, that market can become a weapon. And Trump understands that. He knows Canadian industries depend on US access. He knows uncertainty creates panic. He knows tariffs can shake steel, aluminum, lumber, autos, energy, agriculture, and supply chains. So his strategy is not random. It is designed to make Canada feel exposed. But Manitoba's response points to a different question. What happens if Canada starts building alternatives? What happens if provinces do not only react to American pressure, but start positioning themselves around ports, corridors, infrastructure, and new markets? That is why Churchill matters. A northern trade corridor is not just a construction project. It is a sovereignty project. It is about whether Canada can move more of its goods to the world without depending so heavily on the old north-south route into the United States. It is about Europe, energy, minerals, and options, which are powerful in a trade war. That is why Manitoba suddenly looks more important than Washington may have expected. This is not just a province pulling American bottles from shelves. It is a province sitting inside a larger strategic conversation about Canada's economic future. Short-term pressure through the liquor ban. Long-term positioning through Churchill. A message to Washington now. A possible route to the world later. That combination is what makes the story bigger than the interview. Because Trump may have expected Canada to complain. He may have expected Ottawa to negotiate. He may have expected provinces to make symbolic moves and then quietly return to the old relationship. But did he expect Manitoba to become a symbol of resistance? Did he expect a liquor shelf to become a national talking point? Did he expect Wab Kinew to turn one tariff question into a clear message about access, pressure, and consequences? Maybe not. And maybe that is why this moment matters. Because Manitoba's move reveals a shift in Canadian posture. Less pleading, more pressure, less diplomatic fog, and more public clarity. Less waiting for Washington to behave and more willingness to make Washington feel consequences. However, that does not mean Manitoba can defeat the United States. It cannot. That does not mean an alcohol ban will end the tariff war. It will not. But it shows something important. Canada does not need equal power to apply effective pressure. It needs strategic and visible pressure. Pressure that reaches real constituencies and makes the other side notice. And Manitoba did that. It turned missing bottles into a message. A tariff answer into a slogan. And a provincial policy into a national signal, which was simple. If you want access, remove the threat. That is the line Washington should remember. Because the question is no longer only what Washington can do to Canada. It is what Canada is finally prepared to do back. So did Trump expect this? Did Washington expect a province to turn alcohol into leverage? Did they expect a premier to say the quiet part so clearly? Did they expect a tariff fight to become a consumer boycott, a political embarrassment, and a conversation about northern trade routes all at once? Maybe not. And if Washington is stunned by that, maybe it is because it got too comfortable believing Canada would never really hit back. If this breakdown gave you a deeper view of what is happening behind the Canada-US trade fight, subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the like button so more people see this analysis. Share this video with someone who thinks the alcohol ban is just symbolic. And turn on the notification bell, because the next stage of this fight will not only be about tariffs. It will be about CUSMA, Churchill, and trade routes. It will be about whether Canada keeps reacting, or finally starts rewriting the terms of the relationship. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Manitoba right to hold the line? Should other provinces go even harder? And did Trump underestimate how far Canada is willing to go when pushed? This is Liberation Lens, where perspective matters, and where we do not just follow the headline. We follow the power behind it.